give you Joseph Velden. Put your books down. And okay, sit down in the seat and dan gaan we beginnen. Hey. Welcome, Joseph, and thank you for joining us here for this this session. So thank you. Let's see if your sound works. So hi, Joseph.
Hi, how are you? Welcome and thank you. And hello, everybody.
Hey, Joseph, it's great for you to take your time out of your very busy schedule. I know you have a very busy schedule to help us out here. These are all UPW graduates, and they're here, of course, to learn more and to go even further faster. So thank you for helping us out with that. So thank you. Everybody give Joseph a big round of applause for helping. So the first question, Joseph, is they've now been to UPW. How can they maintain their momentum, and how can they go even further faster? Can you tell us a bit more about it? Can you give some advice to us?
Absolutely. Well, first off, let me say hello, everybody, and thank you for allowing me this time to spend some time with you, because it's only been about a month and a half, maybe 2 months since I saw you last. So welcome, welcome back. The second thing is, I know he told you to put your books down, but I want you to pick your books up because I want you to take some notes, if you will, because I want to do what he just asked me to do, and that is to give you some tips on keeping your momentum going and going what I call further faster. So being that I wasn't expecting this, that you guys would all have been UPW grads, so you know me, but I'm going to share a couple things about myself that you may not know, and it's really qualifies me to talk to you in this way that I'm going to now. Most of you know that by profession, I'm a psychologist. I have a doctorate in neuropsychology, and I spent, gosh, about 10 years. I had a practice in Los Angeles, not too far from where I live right now, and I help people get over fears and phobias and emotional challenges that other people weren't able to do them. And I'm a neuropsychologist, and what that means is, instead of taking years and years to work out a problem, through the neurosciences, I can help somebody get over a phobia in a very short amount of time, just an hour, hour and a half, and that kind of thing, and lasting. So I did that for a long time. I taught as a professor at the University of Southern California for 7 years, and I loved doing that. However, it was very limited, meaning it was working with people one-on-one or small classrooms. And so I partnered up obviously with Tony and several other people, and I do events of my own. Because my outcome is to impact as many people as possible. And I'm sharing all that with you, not to brag or to boast, but for two important reasons. Number one, like I said, kind of what qualifies me to be talking to you. But number two is, it might sound a little noble, but it's just the truth. The reason why I do what I do is because somebody did that for me, somebody helped me. And my outcome is always to make a difference and to help people do more for other people. So I can see you. So raise your hand if you agree with me that the world needs more leaders and more examples of people that are going further fast. Perfect. Well, if you'll allow me to, I'm going to consider that person is you. And raise your hand again if you agree with me that you are one of the leaders, that you're one of the people that are going to make a difference and go out there and make a change in this world. Perfectly. Perfect. And so again, I want your permission to speak to you that way, as though you're already doing that. And I'm assuming that because you showed up here today, and I thank you. So having said that, what I'm going to give you is the 4 mistakes, first off, that entrepreneurs, leaders, and achievers make that kills their momentum. Okay, these are the 4 mistakes, and then I'm going to give you the 3 areas of what I call the 3 pillars of further faster that are going to remedy those mistakes. And most all of you, including me, have made these mistakes before, And when I say mistakes, they're not necessarily conscious mistakes because they just happen. And I'm going to say this, and I said it at UPW, I said to a lot of you at UPW that as achievers, first off, I consider you an achiever, and that means that you are asking and willing to do more than the average person. Is that true? Yes or no?
Yes.
Absolutely, because that's what it's going to take. I was teaching this to my son the other day. These aren't the 4 things, but I'm going to tell you, there's 4 steps to success. We call them the 4 patterns of success. And that is, number 1, it's going to be difficult in the very beginning. When you go after something, it's going to be difficult. Number 2, these are the patterns. When it's difficult, number 2, do it anyway. Even though you might not want to, even though it's hard, even though it doesn't feel good, even though it's uncomfortable, do it anyway. And that leads to the second or the third step, which is it becomes easier because you did step number 2. And then the fourth step is to celebrate your success. So even what I'm going to teach you now, and even the 4 mistakes I'm going to give you, and even the thing that I'm going to give you at the end of this, the 3 steps, and invite you to do something, it may seem difficult in the very beginning. But remember, when you do it anyway, even though you don't want to, even though you know how you're going to do it, even though it feels like, this is uncomfortable, whatever, if you do it anyway, that's where your success comes from. And raise your hand if you agree with me that you can relate to that in your life, that there's been something in your life that you wanted to do, but it was difficult. And then when you did it anyway, it became easier and you got success. Raise your hand if that's true with you.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely, with everybody. Those are the patterns of success. In other words, if you miss one of them, you're not going to succeed. So here are the 4 mistakes that entrepreneurs, achievers, leaders make in general. Number 1, failure to refocus. That's the number 1 thing. Because achievers and leaders and entrepreneurs, they generally know what they want. And if you remember, I taught you before, the ultimate success formula is know your outcome. Write it down, okay? So this is the biggest killer of momentum, is that people know what they want, and achievers even go after it, even when it's uncomfortable. But here's what happens. You can go after something, but then life steps in and knocks you off of focus, gets distracted. Raise your hand if you get distracted during your day with a lot of different things. All of us. If you have a cell phone, it's a distraction. If you have children, it's a distraction. If you have a relationship, it's a distraction. If you got anything at all, it's a distraction. And I'm not saying they're bad distractions, they just are distractions. And what happens is you can be focused on something and the thing that you want and know that you got to do it, and all of a sudden you got to go pick up the kids to take them to soccer practice, or you get a phone call, or whatever happens. And all of a sudden you got to deal with that thing and not the thing that you're focused on. And again, I like that I can see you because I can see your interaction. Raise your hand if you get to the end of the day oftentimes and then realize that you didn't put as much time or as energy into the thing that you know you should have. Raise your hand if that's true. With all of us, okay? Every single one of us, self included. I got, at the top of the call, he said, I'm very, very busy. I have a lot of things to do, but I'm going to give you part of the solution to help you with that. How many of you have a cell phone? Everybody. Okay, so now what I said was the number 1 thing, I didn't say was failure to focus. I said the number 1 thing is failure to refocus. To refocus. Because what happens is you need to be reminded to go back to what you're doing. Because oftentimes something will knock you off focus and you'll go start checking your emails out, and then all of a sudden you wake up 2 hours later and you've been screwing around on Facebook or something like that. Raise your hand if you understand what I'm talking about and you can relate to me, okay? But if you had a reminder to go, hey, remember, get back to work, or remember, get this done, or remember, then you would refocus. So the key to it is take your cell phone and watch this. I have an iPhone, but watch this. Siri, remind me to refocus in 1 hour. Oh, I have my headset on. Let me do it again. Hang on. Okay, let me try that again. Siri, remind me to refocus in 1 hour.
Okay, I'll remind you.
That's it.
Delete this reminder.
Now, what happens is I can be off doing something else because I got defocused. And then when she reminds me, I go back to it. But you guys remember me. When you realize that, wait a minute, I was defocused, and go back to what you're doing, what should you do to make sure that your nervous system says, hey, do it again? What should you do? Celebrate. And remember, I joke around a lot, but remember, that teaches your nervous system to do it again. And then pretty soon you don't need this. So what I do is every time she reminds me, I go back and I'll say, do it again and do it again. And every hour she comes on and she reminds me. And then at the end of the day, I've had 12 opportunities to refocus. Raise your hand if that makes sense. Okay. Very, very simple. Remember, I'm about simple things that'll help you change your life. So what happens is most people, when they get distracted one time, they're off for the rest of the day. This will remind you at least 12 times to get back to get focused. You will find that your productivity will increase sometimes tenfold just from doing this, okay? Now, the second thing is, write this down, number 2. First off, raise your hand if that made sense. Okay. And is that simple, yes or no? Yes. Absolutely. Okay, the second thing is failure to get coaching / training. Failure to get coaching and or training. And here's what that means. If you want an extraordinary life, which I know you do, and some of you already do, but you want more. If you want an extraordinary life, you must continue to train in some consistent manner. You must continue to put yourself in situations like you're in right now. You're in right now a group full of people, peers, that are all headed in the same direction. Most people don't do that. Most people don't go get and put themselves in a situation where they're around people that are moving, going further, faster. Most entrepreneurs, and achievers, just by the nature of who they are, they do things alone. They go after things alone, and they try and do it for themselves because they feel strong. And that's a good trait, but it slows you down. Always get some sort of coaching, and always put yourself in situations like you're doing right now where you're learning more. I got to be honest with you. Over the years, and I'm being straight from my heart, dead honest with you on this. Over the years, I have probably spent an easy $250,000 on seminars, on training, and things like that. But I've made 20 times that amount easily. And that's just the money, not to mention my physical shape and all those things, because you've got to keep having it come in. I didn't say this, by profession, I'm a psychologist, but by trade, I'm what's called an ultimate performance specialist. And what that means is kind of a high-end life coach, if you will. And so I have the privilege of coaching movie stars, Academy Award winners, and Grammy winners, and major sports figures, and some politicians, and even some royalty. And every single one of them, those are people that play at a high level, yes? And those people, every single one of them, now I'm going to use a sports figure for it by example. None of them ever just go, okay, I went to practice once or even 2 times. They go constantly all the time, and they're constantly training and they're constantly learning until you get to the point that you're a mega star. My friend Tony Robbins, he taught me that, and he still does it as well. We still continue to go and we learn, put ourselves in that environment. Never make the mistake of thinking, I got it all, I know it all. So the key to it is, just like with the phone, the key to it is always schedule yourself another event or something else that you're going to be doing, because it teaches your nervous system to look forward to something, and you have what we call momentum going forward and urgency. Raise your hand if you were even excited about coming to this event. Yes. Yeah. And that felt good, and that pulls you forward. If you don't have that kind of thing in your life, the next event or something like that, what happens is it's too easy to get distracted, and we already talked about that. Say yes if that makes sense. Yes. Absolutely. So never make the mistake, and remember, whatever you go for is going to show up in your life. That is your reward for being an achiever. Whatever you go after, you're going to get the money, you're going to get the time, you're going to get all that stuff. It just shows up. Which leads me to the next thing, energy, lack of consistent energy. That's the third mistake that keeps people from keeping momentum going. Energy. In other words, the energy to keep going and to go after it and to get up early and to stay up late and do the extra stuff. And most of us, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with your physical shape, although that's part of it as well. Most of us don't have the energy to do more. In the very beginning, remember what I said at the top of this, it's difficult in the very beginning. But the reason most people fail and most people don't go after what they not, because they don't have the energy to do it. They don't feel like doing it. It's tired. I got to stay up late. I got to get up early. I got to do this. I don't want to. And plus, I got to do all the other stuff I got to do as well. People get crazy about it. So you've got to find a way to create energy. But here's the deal. I don't just mean energy to move. I mean the energy that you put out, the electromagnetic energy that you put out. We all put it out. I'll explain to you here in a second. But before, so that's number 3 is lack of energy. And I'm going to go into number 4 because they're connected. Number 4, write this down, lack of attractiveness. Lack of attractiveness. And I don't just mean looking good. I mean attracting people and stuff into your life. Everybody look at me for a second. Understand this. And I really mean this, guys. I want you to get this. This is my secret weapon. It's Tony's secret weapon. It's anybody that I know of that's mega successful. It's their secret weapon, this last thing. And it's not guesswork. It's not California unicorns and crystals and airy-fairy. It's a very, very real thing. It's a science. Remember I told you that I taught at the University of Southern California, and this is one of the things that I taught. Now, I think I asked you this question when I saw you last, but I want to prove you this point, because here's what I want. When I say energy, I mean the energy that you put off. Every living thing puts off something called electromagnetic energy. This is science, guys. This isn't, how many of you saw the movie The Secret? Yeah, pretty much everyone. I love the movie. It's great. But the one problem is they don't really tell you what the freaking secret is. And so I'm going to tell you what it is. And by the way, just so you know, the lady that wrote the book, The Secret, and then made the movie, got the name and the fundamentals of the laws of attraction from a book called Think and Grow Rich. How many of you read the book? Yeah. If you remember, in the first chapter, he says, I have a secret. And if you paid attention to it, you'll know what the secret is. However, I'm not just talking about that, manifesting what you want and all those things. That's one piece of it. And it's a big piece, but I want you to understand leading up to it and how you learn it and how you do it so that it happens. Remember what I just said. Every single living thing puts off energy. That's how you stay alive. You're an electric being. When you pass away, the electricity stops. But you have enough electricity running in your body right now to light a light bulb. You truly do. And your energy is created from the stuff that you eat, the things that you think, the thoughts you think, the water you drink, and all of those things, and your attitude and all those things creates energy. But check this out. Raise your hand, and I asked you this before. Raise your hand if you've ever been driving in your car, and all of a sudden you feel somebody looking at you, and then you look over and sure enough they're looking at you. Raise your hand if that's happened to you. Everybody, okay? And then also raise your hand if you've been driving in your car and you look over at another person, maybe an attractive person or an interesting person, and you look over at them and they catch you looking at them. Raise your hand. Yeah, now understand this. This is a very real thing, but there's science behind it because I want you to write this down. Whenever I put my attention whenever I place my attention and intention on another person / thing, I'll explain what I mean in a moment. Whenever I place my attention and intention on another person or thing, 4 things happen.
4 things happen.
4 things happen. Whenever I place my attention and intention on another person or thing, 4 things happen. Number 1, my energy grows. Number 2, they feel it. Number 3, their energy grows. And number 4, we move towards each other. Now, I'm going to get in depth when I see you next time about what all that means, but I want you to understand that that's science. As soon as you put your attention and intention on anybody else, and for that matter, anything else, your energy grows. And they have a camera that can show this. And when I see you, I'm going to show you an example of this. Your energy, your electromagnetic energy grows. They feel it. That's why when you're in the car and you look at somebody, you put your attention on somebody else. They feel it because your energy grew. And then their energy grows. And then guess what? The reason they look at you is because they move towards you. Raise your hand if that makes sense. Okay. Really, really simple. It's science. Now, here's what I want you to know, is that you do this all the time. But most of us don't do it with intensity. We don't do it the right way. That makes you attractive. That makes you, and by the way, it's geometric growth, not incremental growth. Incremental growth is 1 + 1 is 2, 2 + 1 is 3, 3 + 1 is 4. Geometric growth is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 24, 48, and so on and so forth. And so that's the way you want your life to grow, and it grows with this, okay? These 3 things, I mean, those 4 things I just said right there. And that is, that last thing is your attractiveness. And this is the thing that most people don't pay attention to. Most entrepreneurs don't know this. Or they say, oh, that's silly, blah, blah, blah. Or I tried that or whatever. The only reason it didn't, and it did work for you because of all of us. It does work for us that way. So those are the 4 mistakes. We'll go over them again. Number 1, lack of refocus. Failure to refocus. I told you how to do it. Number 2 is lack of coaching or putting yourself in a situation that you're always going to be getting some sort of energy, okay? Number 3, lack of energy. And that's either you get up and go and all that stuff. And then number 4, lack of attractiveness. Now, I never, ever, 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 ever teach something or talk about something without giving you a solution. Aren't you glad I showed up here today? Yes. Then put your books down and stand up. Yes. Now, while you're standing, here's what I want you to understand. What I'm talking about already works. The fact that all I have to do is say, put your books down, and you guys go, and you get ready, means that you've allowed me to condition you. You understand? It's like Pavlov's dog, okay? But what most people fail to do is to condition themselves so that they have that momentum, okay? So have a seat, and I'm going to share with you the 3 pieces, the 3 pillars of what I call further faster. So get a clean sheet of paper and write down the A factor, the attractiveness factor, the A factor. And factoring is multiplication. Factoring just means growing something bigger, okay? And so these 3 things that I'm going to give you are the antidote to those 4 mistakes that people have, okay? Now, underneath that, write the 60-20-20 rule. 60-20-20 rule. And here's what that means. Most everybody has heard of the 80-20 rule. And what that means is achievement comes in, look at my screen, look at the screen for a second. 80% psychology and 20% mechanics. And what that means is 80% of being able to do anything is just thinking that you can do it, believing that you can do it. It's your psychology. Raise your hand if you've heard that before. Okay, most everybody. And that's, I agree with it, because even though the effort may seem like it's 20%, just getting there is the biggest challenge. Getting to the gym and working your muscles, it may seem like the effort is 20%, but it's not. I mean, is the bigger piece, but it's not. You don't stay in the gym all day long. You go there for an hour, maybe 45 minutes, but getting to that gym, thinking about it, getting excited about it, getting yourself past the procrastination and hesitation, that's the 80%. So I want to add something to it, and this is the further faster model. This is number 1, okay? And that is this. It's called the 60-20-20 rule. And what that means is, yes, the biggest piece is your psychology. It's 60%. You got to think you can. You got to believe that you can. And that'll make you feel a certain way, and so on and so forth. And don't worry, I'm going to show you how to do it so that it becomes as automatic as when I say PUTYOURBOOKSDOWN. I'm not going to say it because you freaks will jump up. Okay? So the reason I had you do that is because I conditioned you in a very short amount of time where you can do it yourself to get these 3 things as well. Okay? So the 60-20-20 is, yes, it's still 60% psychology, and I'll show you how to make that automatic. And then it's still 20% mechanics, or shall I say it's 20% energy, write that down, which is your mechanics to be able to do something and to feel that way. And then the other 20% is what I just talked about, and that is attractiveness. Psychology, energy/mechanics, and attractiveness. And here's what that means. All of us, every single one of us, when we desire something and we want it, remember, in that moment, there's a portion of you that we have 2 sides of our brain. There's the negative side and there's a positive side. Now, there's lots of different sides of it, but I just like to make it very simple. The negatives, the positive side is the one that says, yes, I can do it. I'm going to do it. I want it. I'm made for it. I can do this. I deserve it. I'm the absolute best. Then there's the other side of your brain that goes, no, you're too fat, or you're too slow, or you're too stupid. You're not good enough looking. You know what? You've failed before. You've had a bad upbringing, or, you know, whatever. And they're constantly battling each other. Raise your hand if you agree with me.
Yes.
Okay? Now, that's that battle, the back and forth battle, is your psychology. That's what you think. Whatever you settle for after that battle, or as that battle is going on, whether you give up on yourself or whether you stand up and go after it, that's called your psychology. That's 60% of what's going to happen, because how you think will determine what you feel, and what you feel will determine what you do, and what you do will determine what you get. So if you've got crappy thinking, which most of us do, in some way, or, you know, some sort of doubt, and it's not necessarily your fault, and you might not even recognize that it's going on. Raise your hand if you've at least sometime during your day, you go, wow, I can't even remember what I've been thinking about for the last 3 hours. Raise your hand if that happens to you. Everybody. And that's because your brain becomes numb because of the battle that's going on. Does that make sense? Yes or no?
Yes.
Absolutely. So you've got to find a way to knock out that negative side, so that the positive side of the brain is the dominant side. Said differently, whatever, it's either fear or love, and you want the love to win all the time. But the fear is based on a lot of things. Listen, stuff has happened to you when you were a child that you still carry around with you. Maybe somebody said something negative about you. Maybe somebody said something that, you know, you're stupid. Or maybe it was a well-meaning parent or somebody who said, you know, that's not good enough. You're sloppy. And that's stuck with you, and that's part of your psychology. Raise your hand if that makes sense. Yes. Okay? And most of us have never dealt with that. Most people, like I said in the very beginning, I help people get over fears and phobias and so on and so forth. And something happened 20, 30, 50 years ago, and that still lives in that person's psychology. And so one of my expertises is to help them get it out of it, because you help them with one area and it changes everything. If you help them get over one bad thing and give them the tool to do it, it has a processional effect or a geometric effect on everything else negative in their life. If you help them enhance the love or the positive side, then it has a geometric effect and grows everything positive. Raise your hand if that makes sense.
Yes.
Raise your hand if it would be valuable to you to have a tool to go in there and deal with that fear side of you. Say yes.
Yes.
Okay? That's the number one thing. That is the number one thing that you got. It's the psychology that you got to deal with. And until you do, it's at the very least going to be slow. And I didn't ask you, but I need to ask you now. Raise your hand if you want what you want sooner rather than later.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't even say to make noise, but you guys even yelled it out, because that's what you want. Why wait? That's called further, faster. Okay? Now, the reason I share all this stuff with you is there's a process that I had you put down at the top of the page, and it's called the A factor. And the A factor is the multiplication of those three things. Okay? Number one is your psychology. Number two is your energy. And then number three is your attractiveness. And it goes like this. The first piece, the psychology, is called well, I'm going to put it this way. The first psychology piece is called the true you. And it's in two pieces. It actually takes care of the entire psychology, and it goes like this. You don't have to write this down, but I want you to understand this. That you have three thoughts going on 90% of the time. And they are your belief about yourself, your belief about other people, and your belief about the world around you, the situations, the circumstances, and things around you. Now, you don't have to remember all that, but I want you to understand that when you get those things down, then it starts to work on your psychology. So what that means is I have a couple of different tools, if you will, that I love to teach people. One is called the STOP technique that helps you wipe out that fear. Because most of us, by the way, most of us know the difference between bravery and courage. Okay? Courage is you have it in the morning. You have courage in the moment. If I said to you, like everybody here has walked on fire, and if I said, you know, could you walk on fire? You would go, yes, of course, and you would put yourself in state and you could do it. Courage means something that's in the moment. You have to conjure it up in the moment. Make your move, do whatever it takes to get it. Bravery is something that you are. You are brave. You're being brave. It's part of your being. And that's what is part of, makes it who you are. And so one of the things that I teach, one of the methods is called the STOP technique, is to help you deal with that big fear so that you have it, not something you have to continue to do. So you don't have to keep reminding yourself and having to put yourself in state and do all that stuff so that it comes automatic. Okay. Now I'll share something with you. I'm not sure if I shared with you, let me check. Did I share with you about people breaking into my house at the UPW?
Yes.
Okay, so, and I told you, and for those of you who don't remember, some people broke into my house, and when they did, it was devastating to me, but only for a moment, because I have a default, meaning I got upset for 30 seconds, but then all of a sudden something came over me. I got calm and I got courageous and all my faculties about me, it came around. And it's because I do what I want to teach you so that it's automatic. I don't have to do it. And then, you know, I'll share with, well, I won't share with you that just because of time, but raise your hand if you understand what I mean by a default. Okay. And so most of us don't have that. Most of us get upset about something or get frustrated about something, and even if it's unconscious, it lasts, you know, our whole day and into our lives. So that's number one, is you got to be able to deal with that. The second piece of that true you is, as I said, you're always wondering about what you think about yourself, what others think about you, and about the world around you. That's called your identity. Okay? And from your identity comes your energy. How you feel about yourself in any given moment, your thoughts about yourself and what other people and the world around you give you your energy. If you think about yourself as being spectacular or a badass or I freaking rock or whatever, then you have that energy. Remember in the seminar, I kept having you guys yell out, I freaking rock. You did it enough times, so pretty soon, every time you say it, you feel good. Raise your hand if that makes sense and you agree with me. Yes. Because listen to the words, I freaking rock. I, and then you give yourself those words and it makes you feel good in the moment. Well, raise your hand if you'd like to have that feeling that is your default about yourself, that you're just a badass. Raise your hand if that makes sense. Okay? And so that's the second thing. That's where your energy comes from. The true you, who you really are. Every single baby that is born believes that it is the most important badass on the planet. It does. And it believes that it deserves to be taken care of, and it believes that the universe is going to give it everything that it needs right now. And it does. All they want when they're babies is to be held and to be fed. And their diapers change and things like that. And all they do is they go, I want it. I deserve it. Give it to me. And guess what? Somebody shows up and does it for them every single time. I know that sounds silly, but babies do it all the time. But guess what you don't do? Now, by the way, the baby never, ever, ever goes, I wonder if I deserve this. I wonder what they think about me. I wonder if I'm good enough. They never think that. And because they never think that, they got lots of energy. How many of you have kids? How many of you look at those kids and wonder, where do they get all that energy? It's because they believe they're amazing. You don't all the time. You doubt it all the time. So the name of the game is to put that in your nervous system so that it becomes your default. And you know, I don't teach theory, meaning I'm not going to tell you something that I don't do myself, but, and this might sound arrogant, but raise your hand if you think I have that badassness. So, and you know, I'm not saying that to brag or to boast, but you know me that way because I practice that. And then raise your hand if you want that. So the third piece is this whole attractiveness thing that I told you about. There's a formula, and the formula is, if you do that formula, and I'll tell you what it is right now, knowing what you want, mixed with belief, mixed with emotion, mixed with activity, makes things happen, and each one of those pieces has a thing. I'm sorry I'm going fast, but I don't want to run out of time, because at the end of this, if we can, I'll take some questions if you guys have some questions. But I want to share with you about the A factor coming up. So that last piece is the attractiveness, so that you have the true you have your identity, and then you have the attractiveness. So the things, the situations, the circumstances, the things that you want to make happen come to you while you go after them. And this is critical. This is my secret weapon. This is the thing that gets me to go further, faster. People always ask me, Joseph, how did you do that? How did you do that? And the trick is I do this piece. And this last piece is so freaking amazing. It is my favorite thing to teach. And so Kerber is going to tell you a little bit more about it, but let me share with you. It's something I call the A factor, and it's my favorite thing. And I only, I travel all over the world. I only come to Europe one time, and I think we're going to be doing it in November. Again, Herbert's going to give you details on it, but it's something I call the A factor. It's a 3-day event. First day, or I shouldn't say first day, but on one of the days, we focus on what I just said right there. Everybody look at me for a second, just so I know you're paying attention, okay? Here's what I want you to do, and I mean this from my heart to you. Bring me your worst nightmare. Let me repeat myself. Bring me your worst nightmare. And here's what I mean by that. Your biggest fear, your biggest doubt about yourself, about whatever. Your worst. I don't care what it is. Bring it. And together, you're not going to be able to feel it again after that day. Let me repeat myself. Bring me your worst nightmare. And together, it's not going to be something that I do to you. It's going to be something that I show you, and then we do it together. And at one point, look at me, at one point, you're going to go like this. I can't feel this anymore. And if you don't believe me, talk to Herbert or anybody else that has done this, okay? And it's going to be something that you do to you, and all of a sudden, you can't feel it. It's going to be a void, and we're going to fill that void up with something that's better, something that is positive, something that's going to be your default. And the beauty of it is, it's not going to be one time. It's something that you now have that gift, that tool, that you can do it for yourself and you can do it for other people as well. Raise your hand if that'd be a valuable tool. It's so freaking powerful. And then that leads into the second thing. The second thing is the true you, an identity that is unstoppable. An identity that you put in that space that you absolutely believe beyond the shadow of a doubt. And you don't have to run around going, I freaking rock. It just becomes who you are. You all raised your hands a second ago when I said, how many of you want what I have in terms of that certainty and that? And everybody wants that. I wanted it when I didn't have it. But that's what this day number 2 is about. And then the third piece is the A factor, the attraction factor. I'm going to show you how the process of doing it. And we're going to do it together. And in every single workshop, as a matter of fact, the last one we did, and Herbert will tell you about it, that there were people that created stuff right then and there. I did this, I've been doing this for many, many years. It is my favorite seminar. If you think you had fun with me at UPW, you ain't seen nothing yet. Because seriously, this is my most fun. And the reason I say that to you is because, like I said, you always got to keep training. I always keep training as well. And so what my suggestion to you is, you know, obviously take a look at this, but recognize those 3 areas. What are you doing about them now in terms of getting rid of that, you're changing your psychology, getting rid of that fear? What are you doing about your identity now? And what are you doing about your attractiveness? And then the 4th thing is, what do you have to look forward to do that? And so what I'm going to recommend to you, I'm going to prescribe to you is come to me and let me slap you around for a little while and teach you the A factor so that you have it. Raise your hand if that's something that you would be interested in. Absolutely. Yeah. So here's what we're going to do. Now, Herbert, I don't know the dates. Now, by the way, I unbelievably appreciate Herbert and the people at Success Kids for doing this, because, you know, I literally I do a seminar every single month, you know, sometimes 2 or 3 of them. And so I have not been able to do this seminar in Europe. We did it last year, but I've not been able to do that. So they're generous enough to bring me over there. So Herbert, do you want to tell them a little bit about the dates and when that thing is? And then I'll come back on and we'll talk about how to make it happen.
Yes, we will do that, but we will do that afterwards, also to respect your time. So
okay.
What we're going to do, and then we're going to get Stefan on stage, and he will tell a bit more about this, and we can share some of our experiences. What we can do now is, we run a bit late now. Is it okay if we end it a couple of minutes late so we can take 2 questions? So that we can have the interaction there. Yeah, so we do 3 questions then, not more than 2, because otherwise it's not respectful for your time. And then we will tell you a bit more about AFAC, and we'll continue with the rest.
Okay. Who's got a question for me?
Yeah, who has a question? Okay, can we have a microphone over there? Can you show the, yeah?
Good afternoon. I have a question about this 4 steps. When you give the energy, your energy grows, then somebody feels it, their energy grows, and then you move towards each other. What happens if you do bad energy? If your energy, what you are sending, is negative?
Then you move them away. You push them away. It's just the opposite.
Push energy of somebody else down.
Yes.
And people apart.
Yes, it's just the opposite. And I'll prove it to you. Have you ever walked into a room, and when you walk into the room, people look and notice that you walked in your room? Raise your hand if that's happened to everybody. All of us. But have you ever walked into a room and people could care less and they don't ever notice you? Raise your hand. Yeah, all of us. The difference is not them, it's you. It's how you're feeling in that moment. It's your energy. Because when you put your attention and your intention on yourself and you have fear, your energy shrinks, other people don't feel it, their energy shrinks, and they move away from you. It's just the opposite. So the answer to your question is yes. Negative energy moves what you want away from you.
Okay, so I have to stop criticizing my husband.
Absolutely. It's that simple. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
By the way, instead of stop criticizing him, start complimenting him and praising him. Start versus stop. Okay. Who's next?
Okay, who's next? Last question. Make it a good one to put even more pressure on you.
It doesn't have to be.
Yeah, at the seminar, you gave us some advice on how to come home. You remember? Go shopping, pick something nice, ask them about them.
I call it the re-entry process.
Exactly, I remember that. Do you have any advice how to do it like 6 weeks later, like now?
Yeah. Yes, do the same thing again. Absolutely. Do the same thing again. Call them up before you get home and just say, hey, I can't wait to see you. For no reason at all. Okay? For no reason at all. And so first off, let me ask you a question. Why do you ask that question?
Because I have a company and I've got some employees, and I try to implement some things, and I noticed that sometimes I feel some that they kind of, I don't know the English word, but they're not really open to everything. So sometimes I come in a certain energy, or with a certain motivation or whatever, and I feel that they kind of take a step back or are skeptical about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So let me answer this in a couple ways, and this is why they're going to talk to you about the A factor, because this is perfect for that. Because we all have that situation. Our energy grows down, or we remember what I said. It's three things: what you think about yourself, what you think about other people, and what you think about the world around you. What you just said is that you go into the room and your energy might not be great, and then you're wondering what they're thinking. Okay? Instead of walking into the room with unbelievable energy and knowing that they're thinking the best, even if they aren't, assuming them, because it makes you feel better. Listen, is it possible that when I walk out on a stage, is it possible that there are people in the audience that don't like me, yes or no?
Could be.
You say no. I appreciate that, but the answer is yes. There could be people in the audience. Okay? But guess what I think? I think everybody loves me. I think everybody out there is excited to see me, even if they aren't. But guess what happens? Because I think it, my energy grows, and they can't help it. Their energy grows, and they love me.
Thank you.
I know that sounds simple, but listen, I'm giving you my secret weapon that most people never get. This is the stuff that I teach my high-end clients, and they get it, and it's just like, oh my goodness, and they take off. And so the answer to your question is, it's not them, it's you. And so you've already entered, you can re-enter and do the same thing, or you can get some training on how to do it so that you just walk with that and you live that. Make sense?
Makes sense, thanks.
Fabulous. Well, I wish I could take some more questions. I just looked at my clock, so I'm gonna.
We are running out of time here as well, so thank you very much for your time here. Let's give a huge round of applause for Jim.
Thank you very much. And I've got one more thing before I go. One more thing I want to tell you before I go. Remember this, that life is exactly what you dare to make it. And fortune favors the bold. So the trick is, no matter what, even if it's difficult, even if you don't want to do it, even if it's uncomfortable, boldly step up and dare to make your life magnificent. God bless you. Thank you. I will see you at the top.
See you in November, Joseph.